You gotta give me one thing. I'm a scary judge of talent.
Adolphus Washington, back-to-back plays.
The Detroit Pistons select Luke Kennard from Duke University.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Triple Double Podcast. My name is Corey Albertson of Triple Double Prospects, along with Jason Morrow of 270 Hoops as our producer. And today's guest is a longtime mentor of mine, someone that I spent time with when I was in college, Coach LD, Coach Larry Davis. Coach, what's going on?
Hey, guys, glad to be on the podcast, man. It's good to hook back up with you, Corey.
Appreciate it. Well, Coach Davis has more than 30 years of college basketball coaching experience at Division I level, including stops at Cincinnati, Minnesota, Wake Forest, Delaware, Ball State, the head coach of Furman from 1997 to 2006, and from 2006 until the summer of 2018, Coach Davis was the associate head coach at Cincinnati under head coach Mick Cronin. LD, is that most of the list right there? You've certainly traveled.
Yeah, that's most of the list. The two high school stops were at Cloverport High School in Kentucky, which is the smallest public school in the state, and then from there to Oak Hill Academy, which most people know who know basketball.
Of course. How'd you get into coaching?
You know, when I was 6 years old, my dad took me to my first high school game in Selma, Indiana, and I was hooked from that point on. I walked in, saw the crowd, saw everything that was going on, said, I want to do this, whatever this is, I want to do it. And I can remember that. I can remember it like it was yesterday. That's crazy, but just always wanted to be a coach. My high school coach, when I was a senior, he pulled me in the spring of that year and said, hey, now you're going to college, and what do you want to do? Just talking to me, trying to give me some advice. And I said, I want to coach. He looked at me, and for the next 30 minutes, he told me every reason I shouldn't coach. And he said, so now that I've told you all that, what do you want to do? I said, I want to coach. He goes, you might make it.
Exactly. Well, you certainly made it. Like we said in the beginning here, you did it for 30 years. So, I mean, to do it 30 years at Division I level is crazy. It takes a lot of tenacity, and you've certainly seen a lot of things. But, after 12 years at Cincinnati with Mick and had a lot of success, you announced that you are retiring from college coaching about a month ago. So, what kind of led to that move for you?
Well, sometimes in life it's just time to make a change, and Mick was great. I mean, I love the kids. The programs, have been awesome, and I think we accomplished a lot. I think there's, more there that Mick will accomplish, but you get to a certain age, and I could have probably ridden it out a few more years. I felt like my age was probably working against me a little bit in terms of getting another head coaching job, because a little bit maybe because I'm a little bit particular in that I'm not going to live in the middle of no place just to take a head coaching job. I always said, I would love to be a head coach again, but it would have to be someplace that I would want to live. It would have to be not taking a pay cut. And so that narrowed it down a little bit. And, I just felt like at this time I can go on in life and do a few other things that I've always kind of wanted to do, besides coaching. And I'll stay around basketball. I'm still doing training. I've got a coaching clinic coming this weekend. I'm going to keep my hand in basketball because I love it so much, but it'll free me some time up. And, the one thing that I can tell you about college basketball, it is all consuming. If you're going to be good at it, it's all consuming. It's 24/7 recruiting, thinking about, what you're going to do with your team, thinking about how you can motivate your kids, making sure your guys, minds are in the right place. It's not like a 9-to-5 job. You go home and you forget about it for the rest of the day, and you get up the next morning, you tackle it again. You go home, you might be making recruiting calls. You might get a call in the middle of the night. One of your guys needs something. He's got a problem, or he's got a question, or just needs somebody to talk to. I mean, it's nonstop, and you really don't have a whole lot of time for yourself. And, and again, I loved it, but life where, if you're not careful, you're going to turn around. You're going to be too old to enjoy anything. And I've got some things going where I think keep my hands in basketball, but yet it'll be a little less time consuming or all time consuming.
Well, Furman's a place at, the low or mid-major level where, you've got to get your name out there. It's not necessarily a household name. So obviously it's time consuming. And then, going to Cincinnati when you and coach got there back in 2006, I mean, the program was essentially in shambles, because of stuff that had happened before you guys got there. So just the amount of effort that it took to get there. And then, I know as someone who was there and you being there for 12 years, just the fight that you've got to do to keep it on top. And, you guys did such a great job at Cincinnati with that. But as great of a program as it is with the fans and the kids and everything you guys have had, there's some difficulties with that program. They just are getting a new arena. You've had the conference switch. You've had a conference in the Big East where you had to play against schools who sometimes had a lot more resources. So, you guys really had to devote, your lives to it. And when we've had college coaches come on the podcast, that's really a theme you hear, but it's different, I think, and we've heard it from a lot of younger coaches who've come on the podcast. But as someone who's done it for 30 years, at the Division I level, no one can speak to it more than you can.
No, I really don't know if the people of Cincinnati understood the job that what got accomplished, because I liken it to literally a plane wreck or a plane crash, in that when we got there, we really only had two players, only two bodies, and that was it. And one of those guys was a hurricane walk-on guy, and Ron Allen. And when it all shook out, after when that fall started to roll, was going to roll around after the spring was over, and that required us to sign at least 8 guys to have enough to practice, and just, the daunting task of going into maybe what is the greatest league of all time during that stretch of the Big East, and to have dug out of it and got to the point where now there's a streak of 8 straight NCAA tournaments is phenomenal. And when you look back on it, where we started and where we have been, over the course of the last 8 years. And there's only one way you could do that. That was all out, 24/7, all the time, turn over every stone, dig under every rock. And, the intensity level of coaching that you had to do, it was, and particularly in those first few years, because our margin of error, because we didn't have very good offensive players in terms of overall our team, they were more limited. You had no margin of error. If you were going to win a game, you had to be darn near perfect on the defensive end, and then you had to make sure that you got a good shot every time down on the offensive end. In the last few years, we've had much better offensive end. And if the guys who are on those first teams, this is no disrespect to you guys. It's just the facts. We've had better offensive players in the last few years, and so. But I'll give that first group credit in that they built the foundation. It set the mark of how hard you had to play, how you had to play defensively, and how you had to rebound the ball. And we've been able to sustain that as we've added better offensive players. And that's why, we got to the point we could go to 8 straight NCAA tournaments. And, it was a daunting task, though, compared to where we started, and it was all consuming. That's all I could say.
Well, we've had several, coaches on the podcast talking about recruiting, and one thing I'm a believer in college recruiting is finding guys that fit your personality. And I mean, you being the associate head coach with Coach Cronin for 12 years, you guys have similar personalities, and in building the program, you had to have guys, like you said, that are willing to lay that foundation. To an extent, you can kind of throw talent out the window, because you had to have guys who were willing to turn down the, glamour of some of those programs that were at the time in a better state in the public eye for the task at hand that was kind of to build Cincinnati.
Yeah, no question. And, I give, the class with SK and then Kashmir Wright and Deion Dixon and those guys, they made a decision to, come here. And, Kashmir Wright particularly, he had a lot of people recruiting, and he believed in Mick and he believed in us, and he made that leap of faith and that, hey, that this is going to get turned around and it's going to be good again. And, he came with us, and then, we got another guy, and then, I'll give too, looking back on it, when we signed Lance Stevenson, even though we didn't go to the tournament the one year he was there, he changed a lot of the attitudes about recruiting, I think, among recruits, in that, oh, Lance Stevenson went there. It must be an okay place to go. And, again, great appreciation for Lance deciding that, hey, this is the place he would come. And, I think there were several factors that led to that. But you're right, Corey. We have done it a little bit differently in recruiting, and we've been able to find guys that met our personalities, and also find guys that were workers and got better. And I like to think that we discovered some guys that people were a little bit better than everybody thought, and we had a good enough eye. And I think the staff there, everybody that's there now, and certainly Mick, I think they had a good eye. We found people that people were overlooking a little bit sometimes, and that led to Gary Clark and SK and Jacob Evans, and some guys that really turned out. So that just you have to find your niche, and you have to find out how to do it.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about with you, which is, one of your big roles with Mick was to really do a lot of the development of these guys on the court in terms of individual skill set. And, one thing when people talk about guys who play for you, and there's other schools in this mold, but they talk about a lot of guys who come into Cincinnati as really, really good athletes, guys who quickly develop strong bodies, guys who are really mentally and physically tough. But sometimes you have a guy like Jacob Evans who, now he's a first-round pick, but as a freshman wasn't necessarily the most skilled kid. So, how do you, when you were, coaching there, when you were in charge of individual workouts, take kids who have the physical tools and the mental tools, but you need to, comparatively to a lot of kids coming into the college level, catch them up quickly on skill set?
Well, it's a matter, Corey. They say there's no substitution for hard work, and a lot of it's just repetition and getting your guys to work at a level that's game speed, and getting your guys to buy into, hey, you've got to develop. You've got to learn to, whether it be the drills or talking or whatever, you got to buy into what we're telling you. And we're going to work you hard enough in the drill stuff. If you'll work at it at the level you need to, it's going to begin to develop you. And then constantly talking to them, about developing their mental game as well as their physical game. But no substitution for hard work, no substitution for guys buying into, what we're telling them. And, Gary Clark is a perfect example. I mean, it looks like he is going to make the Houston roster, and he's a kid that, when he was a freshman, we started playing the matchup zone because he couldn't guard anybody. But we knew we had to play him because he could score and because he could really rebound. And his last 2 years, he ended up being the defensive player of the year two times in a row, because he bought into what we were telling him about, look, you're a good offensive player. You can rebound. He bought into the shooting part of what we were teaching him, and defensively. And every time I talk to the guys at the Rockets, they're going, man, this dude he knows where to be. He knows how to defend. It's so easy for everybody here to love him because of that alone. And he's a good example of, he bought into what was being taught to him. And, would like to think we knew what we were talking about. So,
well, I told you the other day that we had, you mentioned Kashmir Wright. We had Kashmir Wright on the podcast, and the whole point of having Kashmir was part two of a two-part episode. First part was with Youngstown State head coach Jared Calhoun, and we just did, from a coach's perspective and a player's perspective, the adjustment to college basketball as a freshman. And then with Cash, we kind of took it a little further than that. But in kind of developing in that sense of culture that you just discussed, a couple things that stood out with the discussion with Kashmir were, number one, I mean, one thing Coach always talked about, you always talked about, which is, you have to check your ego at the door. And then number two, that in terms of the working, in terms of the skill development, he talked, I think, about having to make mistakes, but if you make them at a fast pace, recover from your mistakes, and just basically pushing yourself to a point where you're uncomfortable to prepare you for what you're going to face in the game.
Yeah, no question. The biggest adjustment that kids have to make when you look at it, most of them are better athletes than their peers at their particular high school, so they can get a lot of things done playing at a 3-quarter pace. And now you're here and you're playing against guys that are all like you, just as athletic, just as skilled, just as, want to go down the line. And you have to gear it up and play all out all the time. That starts in development, not just in practice. It starts when you're doing skill development, because if you don't work at it there, you're going to have a hard time practicing hard enough to get good enough to help us win. And I think that's one of the best things that we did. We have that culture of when it's time, when you cross between those lines, it's time to go to work, and you give everything you got. And there's no other way to go at it. There's no half speed things. There's no, well, we're going to just go through the motions today. If you do or try that, we're going to call you out on it, and we're not going to accept it. Because in coaching, the one thing I know, you don't get what you ask for. You get what you demand. There's a difference. You can ask a kid to do something, and he can either do it or not. But if you demand he does it and don't accept anything less, then he'll either become a player and develop in who do you want, or he'll probably be gone. He probably won't be around Judy. And if you're gonna be good, you got to demand. And Mick certainly has done a great job in demanding at Cincinnati, and hopefully I was a part of that as well.
Well, the other part of that, though, is really, like you said, taking guys who are behind and, are guys who you're taking a chance on and maybe somebody else didn't believe in, and really teaching them how to play. And the other thing Kashmir talked about when I was, talking to him about what are your big adjustments to college basketball, and what he said was not necessarily the plays, but, how we do things and why we do things. For example, he would say, I know I'm supposed to come off of a pick and roll, but I didn't understand at an early stage of my career what all that was setting up. And, just talk a little bit for young coaches who are listening, and how you basically start a progression where you're working on stuff 1-on-0 all the way towards 5-on-5.
Yeah, I mean, but we'll use pick and roll as an example. You're doing dummy pick and roll, and you're teaching the kid how to, drive his defender down below, get him off of you, get your shoulders square. And you have to do that probably, 1-on-0 first, and just with a dummy pick. Okay. And then you're progressing to, as you come off now, what are you looking at? Because in high school, you set a pick and roll, you're thinking, hey, I'm just going to turn the corner and go score. And a lot of the times you can't, because you're just better than everybody. In college, they're not going to let you do that. So now, what is the pick and roll really for? It's really not for the dribbler. It's to get the roll guy or make somebody help on the roll guy, and then you find the open guy, whoever helped him, and that's the guy open. And you have to make that progression through going from, 1-on-0 of just physically doing the act and trying to keep your head up and talking to them about it, to then you go to, 2-on-2, and now you're looking for the roller every time. Now you add another defender, and now you're looking for, well, did he tag, or is the roller open? If he, what we call tag, in other words, the third defender took the roller as they were trying to stop the ball screen, and now you throw it to the tag guy. So it's a progression. Your dribbling drills, you do 2-ball drills. Why do you do 2-ball drills? Because it sounds good? No, you do 2-ball drills to force a kid to dribble with his off hand, whatever that is, his right or his left hand. You're forcing him to have to control the ball with his off hand. as he's working with his strong hand. You do a progression of, whatever it may be. If you're working on crossover or whatever, you may have to do it slow at first, and you want to get them to the point where they actually lose the ball sometimes because they're trying to cross the ball so hard. And it's a matter of, you got to keep them progressing. You can't just say, well, okay, we're going to let the kid, cross over in front of a chair. Well, how is he crossing over? How hard is he doing it? Is it slow to fast? All those things as you teach, and it's usually step by step. It's not, you can't jump over 5 steps. And, that's the key to developing guys is take each step at a time and get them better and better and better. And it's like climbing up the ladder. You can't get to the top rung by skipping 6 rungs. You gotta go one level at a time, and get them to buy in and make that progression of getting better with each day that you're in the gym.
So when you're, now you say you're going to get into doing some training stuff. So, that's going to mean definitely some younger guys. So when you're looking at guys who are high school players or younger, or, college players who are trying to become more successful, what are the skills that you want to work on that you think, these guys don't have right now when you see the average basketball player?
Well, I think so many people, again, they want to skip all the steps. For example, when I'm working with a young guy for the first time, one of the first drills that we do is a simple dribble and jump stop and pivot, and be able to pivot on both feet, be able to front pivot, and be able to reverse pivot. Because when you think about basketball, whether it's coming off a screen and catching the ball and turning to shoot, that's a pivot. If you're in the post and you're going to make a jump hook, that's a pivot. If you're going to be under control as you drive the ball, you got to be able to jump stop. And then if you don't have a shot, pivot and find somebody that's open now because you caused the defender to help. But everybody wants to get to all the other stuff. They want to go do the post move before they teach a kid how to actually pivot and pivot strong. And that's just an example of, I think you got to be really fundamental. The fundamental things have gone out the window. In shooting, I break their shooting down to start with one hand, because a good shooter shoots really with one hand, whether he be right-handed or left-handed. His offhand is only there to get the ball in position to shoot it. But so many people want to just go do a shooting drill without saying, okay, does this kid have a structurally sound shot? Does he get his feet right? And so I think the thing that you got to do if you're going to be really good at developing guys is you got to put the building blocks in to get to the more advanced things. As I was talking about, you got to take those steps. And as I develop guys, I try to start them out, no matter where they're at. Let's check their fundamentals. Can they jump stop? Can they pivot? Okay, can they know to pass the ball with their outside hand? Right hand and left hand. Can they do that?
Well, LD, I mean, I see a lot of guys when I see, stuff on social media or whatnot. You see a lot of guys who are just maybe average high school players, but they post. Everybody likes to post videos of their workouts, and you got average high school players doing 3 crossovers, finishing with a Euro step, and you just don't see that stuff in the game.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can do all the fancy drills you want to do. I try to do things that are practical, things that are going to translate to actual game action. Hey, if you've got a good hard crossover and can lower his shoulder and get under and by a guy and step by him, you don't need 7 dribbles. They get you in trouble. And I think in this world of all the guru workout people, sometimes it's about, well, I'm going to have a parent sitting over there. I'm going to have somebody watching. So I'm going to do a drill that looks impressive, but it doesn't really teach a kid what's practical in a game. How can I use this in a game? And not that you can't, have combo moves and all that. I mean, those are great, but as I try to teach a kid, or as I try to train a kid, I try to do things that I know this is going to work in a game. This is going to get you open in a game. These are things that you have to be able to do in a game. And I talk to a lot of NBA people, and they at times laugh when they'll go see a guy work out with somebody, and they'll say, he's doing this drill and he's having him hop on one foot, do this and that. He said, I don't get it. I mean, all that looks great in the drill, but what's it got to do with basketball? Or what's it got to do with beating your man in a real game?
Well, everybody you guys had at Cincinnati, with the possible exception of Lance Stevenson, who was, probably on another, well, not probably, was on another level of offensive talent, is the guys who were good players weren't flashy guys. I mean, you look at Sean Kilpatrick or, Deontay Vaughn, and they're guys who they learned how to get to their spots on the floor to score the ball off something simple. And that's really what the NBA wants guys to do. And, there's a couple guys, every team in the NBA's got a Harden or a superstar that can make it look easy. But in reality, the overwhelming majority of the players, it's about having a couple simple things to get to your spots on the floor and score.
I go to Chicago, and one of the big things that we teach taught at Cincinnati, and they still teach, is what's called stride stop. And it's not a jump stop. It's a different kind of stop. It's a one-footed stop and allows you to spin back away from a guy. And one of my proudest moments, I have to say, as a coach, is I watched Jacob Evans, and he's scrimmaging in Chicago, and 3 times he drives the ball hard, stride stops, spins back. The defender goes flying by him. He's wide open for the shot. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? We taught this guy something that's useful, that is going to help him, is going to serve him well. And, I just think that that's probably been our strength, and the whole program's strength is, whether it be Coach Savino teaching the big guys or me and excuse me, Coach Jackson, working with the guards, and then Mick overseeing it all, and his input and his work it was always about, look, how does this help you in the game get to where you need to get to? Like you said, get to your spots, get to a position you can score in, finish around the rim, whatever it might be. How does it get you to have your head up so that you can see the play that needs to be made? The pick and roll, for example, just how hard we worked on that and getting them to understand what the pick and roll really is, as opposed to just drilling it, and they don't understand that. But I just that's our philosophy. That was my philosophy. That'll always be my philosophy of teaching kids. They got to be fundamentally, and they're going to actually translate to what happens in a game.
Well, talking about, let's shift off court now. Talking about working with kids and teaching kids, the other aspect of this that I wanted to talk to you about is 30 years of coaching, 12 at Cincinnati, several as a head coach. You've obviously built a lot of relationships with kids. And, in terms of my perception of you at Cincinnati was, being an assistant with a veteran assistant, a little older, you certainly had to develop a relationship of being like a father figure to a lot of these kids. And I think when you look at, guys like Kashmir Wright, you would say second father, but then there's also a lot of guys, that came to Cincinnati that, come from rougher backgrounds where, you really had to be hands-on and help those guys, and they don't have a lot of male influences. So just, talk about just that aspect of coaching and then the relationship aspect of it all.
Well, I mean, I think, we all get into coaching, because we love basketball, but I don't think there's many coaches getting coaching without the thought of, look, I want to help some kids. I want to help them be better. I want to help them be successful. And, one thing I can assure you that my time at University of Cincinnati, every guy on that staff, Mick spent as much time talking about life as he did about basketball. And we go the same way with our guys in meetings. A lot of it's, hey, look, this is how you're going to be successful, not only in basketball, but this is how you're going to be successful in life. And, kids need somebody to check them sometimes, say, look, man, you're looking at this wrong. I can sit there and lie to you. And one of the things that we always try to, in recruiting and any meetings that we have with kids, look, we're going to tell you the truth. You may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you the truth because that's the only way we can help you. Now, you can either believe us and buy in. Sometimes you're going to like what we say. A lot of times you're not going to like what we say because, again, we're telling you the truth, not what all these people out here are telling you because that's what you want to hear. And that's one of the biggest problems in in all of basketball right now, you've got too many people telling guys what they want to hear and sowing this dream that's not reality of, even a kid that's clearly got a chance to play in the NBA. Instead of telling that kid, look, you've got talent, but it's really, 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 really hard to make the NBA. You can't let up for a second. They're just telling them, hey, you're going to make it, you're and all this, and that does them no good, and but the relationship thing, I think, is big, from the standpoint of, A, you want to try to help them, and B, it's a lot easier to coach a kid that you got a good relationship with, and he believes in you, trusts you off the court, and the things that you're telling him off the court, and you're taking the time to do that, and he realizes, hey, this guy's not just using me. He's not just using me for basketball, and that's one thing that I want to believe that I always was one of my principles is that I wasn't there just to use some kid for basketball to get some wins. I was there to try to help them be better people, help them be successful in life. And if that was through basketball, great. If it ended up, which, let's face it, 80% of them, basketball is going to end for them fairly quickly after college. What are they going to do then? What lessons were we able to teach them that will allow them to be successful? And, I was extremely humbled by the number of calls from former players and people who I had worked with or coached once I decided to retire from college basketball, and just people calling me saying the nice things that they said. And a lot of former players, man, a ton of former players, from guys at Minnesota, the guys at Furman, the guys, former Bearcats, just down the line. It humbles you, and to think that, what, I did touch a lot of lives, and, hopefully you touched them in a positive way. And, the relationship thing only benefits you as a coach. It benefits you from a gratification standpoint, but also benefits you on your teams. When you get that relationship, they want to play for you. They want to work for you.
Well, there's a lot of guys who, are better than they would have been if they hadn't picked up basketball. And, people want to quantify a win as a coach as, sending a guy to the NBA, but that's not necessarily the truth. And we've had junior college coaches, Wolf's brother, Moose, and Moose came on and he talked about, sometimes you take a kid, an inner city kid without a lot of structure, and just the fact that they can get to junior college basketball is a great win for that kid personally. And, one thing that college coaches consistently talk about on this podcast is the ability of you guys to teach using basketball as a tool for your benefit, not letting basketball use you for its benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I'll tell you, I'm going to give you a quick story. And I had a kid at Furman University when I was there, and I signed him. His name is Paul Foster. I signed him out of Oak Hill Academy. He was a good point guard. Well, later this is when I was early on there, and later that same summer, we got an opportunity to sign another guard out of Brazil. The guard out of Brazil, a kid named Guilherme de Luz, ended up being the all-time assist leader, about the third or fourth leading scorer in Furman history, and just had a tremendous career. And Paul, his first 3 years there, ended up kind of playing behind Guilherme because Guilherme was just better. And he struggled with it. His father struggled with it. And finally, at the end of Paul's junior year, he walked in my office and said, Coach, he said, next year, he said, I know I've complained, my dad's complained. He said, I just want to win. I'll do anything I can to help us win. If that's play 5 minutes, I'll play 5 minutes. If it's play 20 minutes, I'll play 20 minutes. Whatever you tell me to do. I'm just telling you, I'm not worried about my playing time, any of that. I just want to win. I want us to win next year and have a great year. I said, Paul, do you really mean that? And he said, yeah. I said, well, we're going to call your father in here. You're going to tell your father that because your dad is always in the stands. He's always complaining. He always thinks that you should be playing more and all that kind of stuff. And to the kid's credit, we had a meeting. He looked right at his dad and said, Dad, you can come to the games and you can cheer for us. If you start complaining, about how much I'm playing or not playing. He goes, you can't come anymore. He said, I told Coach Davis all I want to do is win. He said, and I'm bought in if it's 5 minutes or if it's 25 minutes. We go to Paul's senior year. We play first 15 games or so. And he plays some, probably plays a little bit more than he did the other years. And he always played 10 minutes a game or so, but he wasn't a 25-minute-a-night guy. He always played 10 to 15. And he was probably playing about that again. And we were having a pretty decent year. Well, my best player, who was a first-team all-conference guy, an agent got to him and got in his head and convinced him it's more about what his stats were and all those kind of things. And he was playing like a complete idiot. I put up with it as long as I could. And finally, I just benched him. My best player. I started Paul Foster because Paul Foster worked and had the right attitude. I started him in his place. We went to the championship game of the Southern Conference and won 5 straight nights in a row, which had never been done in the history of the conference. And we lose at the buzzer to Davidson. Paul Foster now manages over $200 million in his financial company, him alone. Now, he has other people that manage more money than that. He's about 35, 36 years old. And he will tell you to this day that when he made that decision that it was more than about him, that's when he was on the road to success. And I could not be prouder of a guy. And not because he's got millions of dollars, but because of the fact that he finally realized what I was trying to teach all of them. Look, this is about all of us. Each guy has to learn to play his role. Sometimes you're not going to like your role. And he went through some steps to get to that point of making where he's managed $200 million. But he would tell anybody, he's told several people that story, the same story. He says, that's the point where I turned around and I knew I could be successful because and it worked out for him. I mean, he ended up playing 25, 30 minutes a game and played terrific. And maybe I was a dumbass and should have been playing the whole time. But, that's a perfect example of what you're talking about of, as you're coaching, things that you want to happen. Because he wasn't going to be a pro, but he's successful in life, really successful in life. And how he learned to fight through the adversity and how he learned to give over and say, look, this is about, and he runs his company that way. This is about all of us. This is not just about one guy. And, I like to think that's what college coaching is really about.
Well, that's exactly what it's about. And, that's really a testament to what you did in your 30 years here. So, well, as we kind of wrap up, one more time, what is your plan moving forward? I know you've got the thing at Princeton this weekend. What's your kind of overall plan going forward?
Well, I'm gonna work with the training stuff. I think I'm gonna be working with one of the local. I've been approached by one of the local gyms here to maybe help them increase their basketball awareness in the community and help them a little bit. And then I've got some other things outside of basketball that I've had people approach me about. So I'm probably going to be wearing several hats, but a lot more in control of my own time. And, I've been asked by some coaches around the country to come and help them with, some of the things that we did really well at Cincinnati. And, that's been a pleasure to do and be able to go and sit with them and talk to them and hopefully help their teams. And so I got, I got a lot of hats I'm wearing right now, but I'm having a good time. I'm enjoying it and looking forward to, where life leads me here in the next few years.
Well, you're still a busy guy. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast and, being someone I've known for many, many years and it's always been helpful to me.
Well, Corey, I appreciate it. And you did a great job when you were with us at Cincinnati. And I know you're having a lot of success now with what you're doing. And you're going to continue to have success because you've got the right work ethic and the right attitude. So it's great.
I appreciate that. Well, everyone listening, guys, that was Coach Larry Davis, Coach LD, and I want to thank him for coming on the podcast. That was the Triple Double Podcast. For Jason Morrow, I'm Corey Albertson. Thanks for listening. This podcast is brought to you by PlayEasy.com. For players, coaches, or casual athletes looking to book a sports facility, as well as owners and managers of sports facilities, PlayEasy.com is the new one-stop site for streamlined services. If you're looking for a place to practice, play, host your tournament, camp, or other, simply go to PlayEasy.com and create a booking request for your area. Your request will go out to surrounding facilities who will respond with their best offer. Once you receive the offer that best fits your needs, book the facility and you're ready to play. For facility owners and managers, PlayEasy puts the power in your hands to maximize the usage and visibility of your facility. Register your facility for free today at PlayEasy.com. PlayEasy.com is the booking site built by athletes, coaches, and facility managers, and is proud to help bring you the Triple Double Podcast. This podcast is also brought to you by Anago Cleaning Systems. Are you tired of struggling in a dead-end job? If so, Anago Cleaning Systems has what you're looking for, an opportunity to go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. With franchising opportunities available for as little as a $2,500 down payment, purchasing an Anago franchise has never been easier. Once you own your Anago franchise, you're licensed to clean commercial facilities all around the greater Cincinnati, Dayton, or Columbus areas with the support of Anago's sales, quality control, operational, and accounting staff. Call 513-332-0033 today for your opportunity to be your own boss and grow your own commercial cleaning company under the guidance of Anago's proven and successful system. Again, call 513-332-0033 to learn more. With Anago, your future starts today.